All right, so today we're going to continue on with our calendar and try to get some dynamicness added to our calendar. And so if we look at right now, when we go to our calendar page, it sets up 3 different instance variables. It sets up a month and a year, and then it calls what? From the calendar controller, from the calendar action in the page controller, where does it go after that? Remember that loop in your mind. Goes to the view. Okay, so we click here. Now we're in the view. Inside of this view, we're using those variables, the month and the year, to call our calendar helper method. And that is in our helper, page helper. And this just creates a bunch of HTML, does some programmatic stuff, and returns a string, right, that goes back to the view and spits it out to the page. All right? So the only problem we have with this now is that our month and our year are hard-coded in the controller, right? This is not very useful. This will always show November 2013. So how does a website get data from the outside world, from a user? How do they get input from the user? From the URL is one of the biggest ways. And we use that, if you look at Google, for instance, and we do a search for Rails, the Rails PHP. Here's the URL at the top changes based on what we're searching for, right? So this is what they call, well, Google is doing it differently. It's actually with a Q, with a question mark, sorry, this is considered what they call a query string, all right? So I'm passing data into whatever this page is, and that program that runs this page takes this data and does something with it, all right? So in this case, we can pass key value pairs to our page and let our page pick that information up and do something with it. So we might pass the month and the year in, for instance, okay? So every back-end language, like .NET, PHP, Rails, has some way of getting this query string, because the query string is built into the HTTP protocol. It's built into that system as a way of passing information to different websites, all right? And this is all done through the verb. Remember, there are different verbs in our Rails. What are the different verbs of the HTTP protocol? Get, post, put, delete, and there's a new one that they're trying to get supported, patch. So the 4 that deal with the CRUD for a website are get, post, put, and delete. Okay, those 4 different verbs allow us to get the 7 actions that I need for a CRUD or a REST environment. So in a query string, that is all done through a get. This is all done through a get verb. So in Rails, what we do is there is a value that's filled out for us. Let's just put a breakpoint and see if I can get my debugger to run. And run this as the debug version. So we'll hit the little bug here. And if you've never done that before, it will ask you to install a gem and things like that. So I can put a breakpoint in my Rails controller and stop and look at some stuff, all right? So let's call the calendar with some different information. in a query string. So I'll say my month is 10, and then we separate these key value pairs. The key is month, the value is 10. We separate those with ampersands. This works across any language. Ampersand year equals 2013. All right, so those are two query string parameters, two key value pairs that are passed to my calendar method in my page controller. All right, so let's see what happens when I get there. So it stops the debugger right here at the line, and these values now are filled in. I can see time and month and year hasn't been filled in because I'm on that line. But I can look at this special variable that Rails gives us called params. All right, params is filled in for us with all the data that it needs that it got from the URL. All right, so it gave me month. It found that I had a query string key value pair of month, and it set the value of that to 10. It found a year and set that value to 2013. And then the controller and action were filled in the same way, and we used those on our navigation. Remember doing that? The controller is page. So what type of data is params? Ruby. Just think Ruby. It's a hash, all right? So it's a simple hash that has a key and a value pair associated. So a hash works perfect for getting these query string parameters into the program. All I have to do is query that hash. I have to look up the key to get the value back out, right? So how do I get the month out of that hash? If the hash is called params, how do I get the month out of that hash? Okay, and we put month into what? A string, okay, month. So I'm looking up month in the hash. That gives me back a value associated with that, and in this case it's 10. So what does month have in it? At month. A string with a value of 10. It's a string, right? Now, my program, I want to use not a string. I'm going to use that as a number, right? So how do I convert that in Ruby? 2i, there you go. So I'm going to convert this 2i right away. And my year now is going to be param sub what? Year. And we're going to convert that to a 2i again. And now if I rerun this, now year and month will have the values that it gets from the URL. So let's just rerun this before we continue on. We're sorry, something went wrong. All right, we'll reload the page. It comes back into my debugger. And now month, it found, again, the params are still here. And by default, every param comes in from this query string as a string, whether it's a number or a decimal number or what, it's a string. So we, just like we're typing from the keyboard in the gets in Ruby, it's always a string. We always have to convert it into something that we want to use. So now month should have the value 10, which is a real number. And if I step over that, my year should have, well, it goes into another application. So let's just continue on. And close this guy out. Let's reload the page, and it'll break here again. Now, I can also set breakpoints in my ERB. All right, so let's go to the method, this view. I can set breakpoints on the places that have ERB. Notice I tried to put it here. There's nothing here. I can't put breakpoint on HTML. I can only do it on an ERB line of code. All right, so let's put a breakpoint here, and let's see. Let's just continue on. And it executes it. It calls the view. I now have month, which has well, they store it in this weird place in this assigns variable. So month is 10, and year is 2013. All right. And if I hover over them, that gives me the value. So now I'm getting a value. It's an integer. I'm passing those two values to my calendar. My calendar works using those two values and ships me out a new calendar based on that. So let's continue on. Let's erase my breakpoints. Reload the page. Oh, I didn't continue. Erase all my breakpoints. Continue. All right, so now it's saying October 2013. So if I change this to 9, what should this say? September. And how is it getting September? Got a problem there, don't we? Right, so this was hard-coded somewhere. So let's go look at our calendar method. I got too much to open here now. Close everything. Start over. So in our page helper, this is our calendar method. And I believe that we hard-coded this somewhere, and I don't remember where. It could be in my view, yeah. So let's go back to my calendar view. And I just chose the time, right, and created that from the current time, which in this case is October, right? So that's being created dynamically. So let's just kill that. The rest of that, well, actually, let's not. Let's move that into my calendar method so that I can display the month and year dynamically. So I want to get the current date based on the values they pass into me, right? And then I want to print out some information based on that time. So this this string format time gives me the month in a full word. So instead of at time, what do I call strf time on? All right, time, this is basically time.now. What do I call my format time on to get whatever the current month is that they passed in here? At month, well, the at variables are not available here. This is not inside of the view. So that's, if you try month, what type is month? It's an integer, so I can't call integer.string ftime. String ftime only works on a date object. Current date, there we go. So current date is the value. I created a current date object based on the year and month that got passed into my method. So current date is now whatever, September 1st, 2013. Then I say, print me out what does that date look like in a month string. And I need to add that to my cal string, because remember my cal returns the entire string of this. So I'm going to add that to here. Cal equals the current date, and I need to plus equals this guy so I don't wipe it out. All right, any questions on that? Wasn't that interesting? That was interesting. So now if we reload it, I get September, which is just right. Let's get rid of all that other garbage here, this mail to. Day of the week. Get rid of all that stuff. And the day of the week, let's get rid of that. And now my calendar is only going to display the calendar, all the stuff from the calendar. So now it says September, and I've got September. Let's verify that September 1st started on a Sunday. So we'll go back here. September 1st was indeed on a Sunday. So if I change this to 11, that should be November, which November 1st started on a Friday. So let's go up to November. Indeed is a Friday. Very good. Isn't that cool? So by changing these values up here, I can manipulate my calendar and go backwards and forwards, right? So how would I add links to my calendar now to go backwards and forwards? Do I need an input? Well, how do I get the year and the date? I'm already getting that through my params, right? So I have everything I need inside my calendar method now. So let's go to the calendar method. I have everything I need to create a link based on the month and year that they want to display on the page. I can do some math. I can do some math on the date object, sure. But what am I passing to my URL? Right? So if I want to show, this is showing November. If I want to have a link that says go to October, what would the link have to have in it? A 10. Very good. So a 10, if I put this in an A tag, that would go to October, right? If I changed the month to 12, it would go to December. It would go the other way, right? So all I'm doing is manipulating the month. I'm adding one or subtracting one from the current month that's being displayed on the page. So let's do that. Let's add a link here somewhere. Let's add a link to my string, and I can call link to, remember? And what is the click text that I want to link to? Maybe previous month. And what do I want to link to? Well, I can put in the whole, URL. Let's do that to start with. And let's leave out this because it's a relative URL. That's okay. I want to go to the page calendar, and I want to pass it a month, but I want the month to be one less than the month that got passed in here. So how do I create a string that has math in it? I know this is Ruby from last quarter, but if I have a variable called month, I want this month to be month minus 1, right? So let's change that to be, using interpolation, month minus 1. All right, so that's my previous link. So let's just see if that works. All right, so previous comes up, and if I hover over it, see what I'm displaying here is, let's make sure this is right. I'm displaying 12, which is December. The previous month should be 11. So I'm hovering over the previous, I get 11 down here in the URL. I know it's hard to see. If I click on that, here, the 11 here. If I click on that, then the parameters that get passed to the next URL are going to have a month equals 11 instead. So it prints out November because the URL now changed to 11. Now my previous is taking that into account, and I'm showing November, which is month 11. I want to see in my previous link month minus 1, which would be 10. So previous minus 1 gives me October. So I can go backwards all the way. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Because it's getting the year and the month from the URL here. Uh-oh, what happened? Ran out of year, right? So previous here is now set to month minus 1. I'm showing January. Month minus 1 would be 0. I can't create a date based on a 0 month. We just don't have that. So it crashed. You can in JavaScript. You can't. Yes, you can. I think you can even do a negative. All right, so what do we have to do to take care of this problem? Peg it. We have to peg it. Or what happens if they're in January and they want to actually see December? Decrease the year and? Right, so we would change the month to 12. We decrease the year by 1, right? So let's do that. So I have to have some conditional here, right? So let's do some math based on what comes in. My previous month is going to be month minus 1, right? Almost always it's going to be month minus 1, right? Previous year is just going to be the year that I have. Almost always, right? If my I haven't done that yet. We'll get to that. Most always, I'm going to use year and month down here. Okay, I'll use these new variables down here, right? So if my previous month is less than or equal to 0, what do I need to do with that? All right, I need to set my previous month is now going to be what? All right, I'm going to set it to December, and right, there you go. Year minus 1. All right, so now this only happens on occasion. So most of the time this is going to work. If this happens to go backwards one too many, then I'm going to reset those two variables. Now at the end of this if statement, previous month and previous year are going to be whatever the link is going to be for my previous link. So I'm going to, instead of doing the math in here, I'm just going to put in previous month and previous year. So that will put in whatever is calculated based on this math, and this will put in whatever is calculated based on this math. All right? Easy stuff, right? So let's go and reload this page. Now my previous link, if you look at it, has changed both things. It says 12, and my year is 2013. Right? Bada boom, bada bing. Now I'm back to December. And I can keep going.
So if you go to like 1970.
Yes, we could. All right, so I skipped over, but now I'm in the year month. I mean, my previous is November 2011, and the current month being displayed is December 2011, which is here. All right, so we can do that. We can go down to 1970 and make it month 1, and I'm actually getting that. And if I hit previous, it goes to December 1969. So Ruby handles this fine. Okay, if I go back to 1776 into January 1776, so it's correct. Previous should be December 1775. There you go. Sweet. I would move that, right? That's obviously not a good spot to have. So I would probably put my link first and then add my date. Wow, that was slow. Really? Wow. Yeah, it probably is. My proxy's probably stopped working. So let's see what we got. And it's, oh, look at that. Nice. So I have a problem with my I don't think it loaded right all the way. No, it did. Yeah. This line. It has to do with the HTML safe. But we're calling that down here, aren't we? Yeah, I'm calling it above it, right? So. Huh. Interesting. So it does have to do with that. I just don't know why now. And it has to do with link to is coming back with an HTML safe one already. HTML safe is a pain in the rear, let me tell you. Let me pause. All right, so the problem is that link to returns an HTML safe buffer. And when I add normal strings back to an HTML safe buffer, cal is now a safe buffer. It's no longer a normal Ruby string from this point on. So when I add normal text to it, it's fine. It doesn't matter. But when I add HTML, this is considered unsafe when I'm adding a string to a safe buffer. So I have to tell it that this string is safe as well, which is kind of a pain. And every time I add something that has HTML in it, I'm going to have to call this safe on it, which is really a pain. Did you?
Just initialize cal as an empty string on top of all that.
The link, it will still, it'll still call this a safe string though, won't it? Maybe not. All right, well, let's try that. So this would work. That'd be one way. This is better. I like your idea better. So let's do that. Let's take all these safes off. As soon as we turn it into safe, that's the problem. So I guarantee you're going to have these problems. So let's try string. So maybe this will return a normal string now is what it's hoping for. Oh, my God. Oh, my Lord. There we go. Good job, Melanie. Good job. So this forced it to be just a normal string instead of an HTML safe string, and that helped my problem. That way I don't have to do this all the way through. That's a real pain. So let's take this off too. Make sure that it all works still. All right. So how would we do the next link? I'm not going to do it for you. It's obviously, instead of month -1, it's going to be, there you go. When I hit December and I hit a +1, what do I have to do? I have to change my month to 1, right? And then year plus 1. Very good. So you guys do that one. And then tomorrow we will make a nicer URL for this rather than having it look like this. We'll have a nicer URL. All right? That's it. Any questions on that? All righty. Go forth and prosper.